Hello, learners. Welcome to this session. Today, we will be talking about assimilation of food into the body. This topic is part of the certificate program in food and nutrition, course 2, your food and its utilization, block 2, unit 4. I am Professor Deeksha Kapoor from the discipline of nutritional sciences, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Well, we have learnt about the important functions performed by food in the body. We know that our body needs energy to perform the various voluntary and involuntary activities. By now, it must be clear to you that the proteins present in the food, they help you grow, they maintain our body, the vitamin minerals, the essential substances, they protect the body from diseases, infections, and they help the body work efficiently and smoothly. But how does the body tell us that we need these nutrients? Well, one signal is hunger. Yes, we eat when we are hungry. Well, we eat based on our likes, dislikes, preferences, availability of food. Some may like to eat rice, dal, vegetable, salad. The others may like to eat more of non-vegetarian food, meat, along with maybe chapatis or vegetable. So depending on our preferences, we may consume the food. But we also, after a good meal, top it with water. Have you ever given a thought to the fact what happens to the food we eat or the water we are drinking? Yes, this food, which we eat as rice, chapati, dal, or any other food, is actually broken down into simple substances which can then be used by the body. And this takes place in the gastrointestinal tract. And this is the topic of discussion, or our lecture today will focus on the digestive system or the gastrointestinal tract. We will look at the different organs which are involved. We will look at the process of digestion and absorption. We will go further into how are the different nutrients like the carbohydrates, fats, proteins, how are they digested, how are they absorbed, and how nutrients are finally assimilated into the body. We've talked about the functions. How is it possible? So today we will look at the assimilation of these nutrients in our body. So let us begin by first looking at the gastrointestinal tract or the digestive tract. Well, all of you may be aware of the digestive tract. The actual organ, the first organ is the mouth. The eating or the ingestion of food that takes place in the mouth. From the mouth, the food passes into the esophagus, which is the long tube, as you can see. And this long tube then enters the stomach, which is a pouch. The food remains in the stomach for about 2 to 3 hours before it passes on to the small intestine. The small intestine is the 20 feet long coiled tube, which is followed by the large intestine and then the rectum and the anus. So these are the different organs of the gastrointestinal tract which are involved in the assimilation of nutrients. What we must understand is that the GI tract or the digestive tract is very selective. It breaks down those material that are nutritious for the body into particles that can be easily taken up by the body. Particles that are left undigested, they pass out from the other end of the digestive tract. Digestive tract also has a set of rules. First, for the food to pass smoothly, it must be mixed with water. Have you tried eating solid, hard food and you may have choked or you may have found it difficult? to swallow. So water helps make the food soft and swallowing easier. Second rule is that each organ of the digestive tract, they contain specific substances called enzymes. What are they? We will look at it in a while. But these enzymes play a very important role in breaking down the complex nutrients into simple components. And once digestion is completed, all the essential nutrients are then absorbed, and any residue, undigested material remaining, is excreted from the body. The body also withdraws water, excess water, in the large intestine, and finally what is left is a semi-solid mass which is smooth enough to be excreted out of the body. So basically, what is happening in the gastrointestinal tract or the digestive tract? The food is altered physically, and you would notice subsequently also chemically to be used in the right form which the body can assimilate. So let us then understand what is the digestion process. But before that, we will look at enzyme. We said that each organ has specific enzymes. These enzymes are proteins in nature. They act as catalyst to speed the rate of reaction of breaking down the complex substances into the simple substances. If these enzymes were lacking, the process of breakdown may be not possible. And to facilitate this, we need water. Water is absolutely essential for hydrolysis or breakdown of these complex foods into simple foods. So with this understanding, let us then first understand the process of digestion. What we ingest, what we eat, needs to be digested. What do we mean by digestion? The digestion is a process where the complex substances are broken down into simple substances. What is a complex substance? Like we eat cereals, we may eat rice, we may eat wheat, we may take starchy foods like roots and tubers. These are the complex substances. The body cannot absorb these as it is or cannot take it. It has to be broken down into simple substances which can then be absorbed and utilized by the body. So this is the process. The process of breakdown is called digestion of food. Let us look at the process of digestion starting from the mouth till the end process. So as already informed, the digestion, interestingly, you would notice actually starts right from the mouth. When we put food in the mouth, have you noticed that just the sight of food or the aroma, flavor, smell of food, well, it stimulates the production of saliva? Yes, so food is mixed with saliva, water, which is then made soft. So this saliva is stimulated or produced by the salivary glands, and it helps to make the food soft and easily chewable. So food is broken down right in the mouth in smaller particles by chewing the food, and the tongue helps in mixing the food with the water. Once this mass of food which is chewed is available, it passes into the stomach. In the stomach, there are gastric juices which are produced, and these, once the food enters the stomach starts contracting and relaxing, and this further helps in breaking the food into smaller particles, and this then mixes with the gastric juices which are present. These gastric juices contain enzymes which break down the complex substances. Here in the stomach, there are specific enzymes which are present, which we will look at once we move ahead. One of the enzymes for the breakdown of protein is pepsin. Even fat is emulsified here. So this partially digested food then from the stomach, where it stays about 2 to 3 hours, then is passed into the small intestine. Once in the small intestine, we have the intestinal juices, pancreatic juices, the bile juices acting further on the partially digested food. You would notice there is an enzyme called amylase, which is acting on the starch present. There is an enzyme called lipase, which is hydrolyzing the fat and oil which you have eaten as part of your meal. There is another proteolytic enzyme called proteases, which further is breaking down the partially broken down protein in the stomach. So, what is happening? Digestive enzymes in the small intestine are also chemically changing the form of food. Thus, digestion is the physical and chemical alteration of food. Digestion breaks down complex material to smaller, simpler units that body can use. It is in these smaller units that these units are absorbed and they pass through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream, from where it is transported to the different organs of the body. Now let us look at the digestion of each nutrient. We have looked at the overall process of digestion, starting from the mouth, stomach to the small intestine. Let us now get specific to how the carbohydrates which we take in our diet, in the food, in the form of starches, sugars we eat, how is it digested? As you have already seen that for carbohydrates, the actual digestion starts in the mouth. It starts when you chew your food. Saliva is produced, and this saliva contains a starch splitting enzyme called ptyalin. Unfortunately, the food in the stomach remains for a very short time. So the digestion process may not be as effective, but nevertheless, the presence of ptyalin actually starts the digestion in the mouth. This chewed, partially broken food then passes into the stomach. In case of carbohydrates, there are no enzymes which are present in the gastric juices which can act on carbohydrate. So the carbohydrate, the broken down, the chewed food, partially digested, remains in the stomach as it is. Then this food moves into the small intestine. That is where the actual digestion or the complete digestion of carbohydrate takes place. In the small intestine, we have the juices which contains an enzyme called amylase, as you will see, which breaks down the carbohydrates into simple units called glucose. So this is the digestion of carbohydrate in our diet. What happens to proteins? Proteins from the dal you may eat, from the meat products, egg, milk which you take. How is that digested? Well, the digestion actually starts only in the stomach with the action of the enzyme called pepsin. So whatever food you eat enters the stomach. In the stomach, it mixes with the gastric juices which contain the enzyme pepsin, and this breaks down protein or partially digests the protein into simpler units. But still, the food moves further into the small intestine. That is where the complete digestion is done by the action of another enzyme called proteases, which is secreted by the pancreas. And the complex protein is broken down into simpler units. Let us now look at the digestion of fat. Fat digestion occurs mainly in the small intestine. The food we eat as fat, it passes into the stomach. From the stomach, it moves into the small intestine. The bile from the gallbladder breaks fat into smaller particles. There is emulsification of fat in the stomach. And then the food with the fat, the emulsified fat, moves into the small intestine where the enzyme lipase hydrolyzes the fats and oils and breaks them into simple units which can be used by the body. So here is the summary of the digestive process. What happens to food in the mouth, in the stomach, small intestine, large intestine? Let us quickly go through it. So we have seen that in the mouth, when we ingest food, food is reduced in size by chewing. The presence of saliva, which contains an enzyme called ptyalin, the starch food, the carbohydrate present in the food, partially gets digested in the mouth. Then this chewed food moves into the stomach. In the stomach, the food is mixed with gastric juices and proteins partly are broken down by the action of the enzyme pepsin. This food then moves into the small intestine, which you learned is a 20 feet coiled tube. Here, the pancreatic juices, the bile, the intestinal juices, they all act on the partially digested food. There is the digestion of starch into glucose. The protein are further broken down by proteases into simple units called amino acids and fat into smaller units. And it is this smaller unit which then gets absorbed from the small intestine. Whatever is left passes on into the large intestine, the water is reabsorbed, and the undigested food is thrown out of the anus. So this is the summary of the digestive process. Next important process is absorption. Once the food is digested and simpler units are available, this process by which the product of digestion enter the bloodstream through the cell lining of the intestinal wall in the digestive tract. This process is called absorption. We have digested the food. These simple units are then absorbed in the intestine from the intestinal wall and enter the bloodstream, and the absorption process is complete. Let us look at the absorption of each of these nutrients. So the carbohydrate in the food, the chapati, the rice, the potatoes, sugar you have eaten was broken down into simple units called glucose. It is the glucose which then gets absorbed from the small intestine. Similarly, if you had eaten the dal, you had taken the animal foods, milk, egg, meat, all these are broken down and they are broken into simple, the protein present there is broken into simple units called amino acids. And it is the amino acid which gets absorbed from the intestinal wall and enters the bloodstream. As for fats, they are broken down into fatty acids. So most nutrients are absorbed directly and they enter into the blood. But there are some which are absorbed in the stomach itself, like the vitamin B12, and some in the intestine, like the iron, calcium. So the process of absorption is the uptake of the basic units of these nutrients from the intestinal wall into the bloodstream is the process of absorption. What about vitamin and minerals? We've talked about carbohydrate, fat, proteins. Well, you must understand that vitamin and minerals are bound to certain substances, other substances also present in food, like the protein, fat, carbohydrates, or other substances like phytates, oxalates, which may also be present in the food. Therefore, these are present as complexes, and they need to be separated from these complexes, which are also found in the food. So, vitamin and minerals, for example, fat-soluble vitamins, you have learned, need to be dissolved in fat to be absorbed. Similarly, other nutrients like the water-soluble vitamins, they dissolve in water. Therefore, the vitamin and minerals too needs to be separated before they are absorbed or utilized. So any food which is not digested or absorbed from the small intestine, that then goes into the large intestine. And interestingly, no enzyme are present in the large intestine. So whatever digestion, absorption had to take place has taken place in the small intestine. And thereon, whatever is left. For example, you learned about fibers earlier in your session. Fiber, which is the edible part of the food, which is not digested in the small intestine. This remains undigested. For example, fruits and vegetables are rich sources of fiber. The skin of the fruits, you see fiber in the green leafy vegetables, in the whole grain cereals, the outer covering, this is all fiber. This remains undigested as we do not have the enzymes to digest them. And this then passes undigested. But fiber has a property of absorbing water. It swells, it becomes like a sponge. It forms the bulk of the undigested material, which is removed from the body. Therefore, fiber aids in defecation. It prevents constipation. Therefore, the presence of fiber in the diet is essential. So, this undigested food then is passed out of the body through the anus. But once, along with water, this undigested material enters the large intestine, excess water is also reabsorbed along with certain salts and passed on into the blood. And that is how the whole process of assimilation of nutrients goes about it. So the last step is the utilization of nutrient. We've seen how they are digested. We've seen how they are absorbed. Now, once they are absorbed, they enter the bloodstream. What happens? After being absorbed, the smaller units of food like the glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, they are carried to the various parts of the body through the blood. For example, the glucose, the fatty acids are taken to the different cells, body organs to give energy. They are burned to produce energy. Proteins in the form of amino acids, the smaller units, these amino acids are the building block of the body. So during early childhood, we need a lot of proteins to provide amino acids, which are carried to the different parts of the body to grow, for the organs to develop. And by adulthood, when the growth development is complete, the amino acids help in repairing the worn out tissues. It helps in maintaining the body tissues. So we hope you have understood the entire process of digestion, absorption, and utilization. So this was a comprehensive lecture. And what did you learn? You learned that digestion is the process of breaking complex substances into simple substances. We may eat food as chapati, bread, dal, meat, etc. But all this is broken down into simple units like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, which is what is utilized by the body. The digestion begins in the mouth. In the stomach, only the protein-rich foods are acted upon by the enzymes. It is the small intestine where the major digestion of starch, proteins, fats take place. By the time the food reaches the large intestine, only water, fiber, and some dissolved salts remain. Water and salts are reabsorbed, and what is left is the undigested matter, which is then excreted from the anus. And all the nutrients which are absorbed in the intestine are then passed on to the blood, and then they are carried by the blood for production of energy, for providing the building body or the building blocks for the body, and for performing the various regulatory functions we have been talking about. With this, we end this session on assimilation of food in the body. Thank you.